does this tawheed play in our life? We have something called self-worth. Where do we seek our self-worth? You know, what makes me feel good about myself? What makes me feel worthy? Here is the problem. We take other than Allah in order to give us our self-worth. We live in a society, for example, that teaches women that their worth is based on how they look. It's based on how thin they are, how light-skinned they are, depending where you live in the world, depending on how attractive they are. And girls internalize this idea that their worth is literally based on how they look and how attractive they can be. When you make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala your source of self-worth, you have a completely different definition of what makes you worthy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum." So Allah tells us who of us is the most honored. He says the most honored of you in the eyes of Allah is the one who has the most taqwa. So here Allah has given us a definition of worth that has nothing to do with society's definition. He gives us a definition that is based on piety, based on our soul, on the condition of our hearts. When we have tawheed in our life, it liberates us from this concept of having our self-worth defined by society, defined by how much money we make, what kind of degree we hold. You know that we have this trend in our community that people are sort of, they're sort of judged based on, what kind of degree they might have, what kind of career they have, right? So for example, if you want to go and you're looking for a spouse for your son or your daughter, have you guys ever looked at the matrimonial section of some of these like magazines? It'll be like, Gora doctor looking for Gori doctor. It's like white-skinned or light-skinned doctor or MD looking for another light-skinned MD. Now this ad, which is actually real, it tells us a lot about where we put our worth. One, for the girl, a lot of it has to do with how light-skinned she is, how she looks, it's her external. And for the man, it has to do with how much money he can make, if he is an MD or not. And so this is a type of slavery. This is what the companion is talking about. He's saying, I've come to free you from the slavery to the slave and bring you to the slavery of the Lord of the slave. Anytime we make our definition of success, our definition of worth, our definition of failure, anything other than Allah, we are slaves. We become weak. As Allah tells us in Surah Al-Hajj, there's this really powerful ayah in Surah Al-Hajj in which Allah gives us another metaphor, another example for us to pay attention to. And in fact, the beginning of the ayah, He says, pay attention to this. This is an example that Allah is making, so pay attention. So imagine, it's like, someone standing up here, and before they say anything, they say, okay, everybody, pay attention. So now everyone who was falling asleep just got up, right? So now you are paying attention. Well, Allah says, pay attention to this. And He gives a very profound example. He says that those who you call on other than Allah cannot even make the wing of a fly, even if they all came together to work on this project. Even if they all joined together for that purpose, they could not make even the wing of a fly. And then if that fly were to come and snatch something from them, they couldn't even get it back. Why is this so powerful? Because when we seek other than Allah, when we seek the creation for help over the Creator, when we seek the creation for our protection over the Creator, we're seeking something that can't even make the wing of a fly. And then finally, the end of the ayah, in 3 words, is like mind-blowing epiphany, mind-blowing light bulb moment. ضُعِفَ الطَّالِبُ وَالْمَطْلُوبُ, Allah says. Now, the reason why this is extremely personal to me is because these 3 words are basically, for me, probably the most profound light bulb moment I've ever had. It was this realization. And most of my book is based on this realization. ضُعِفَ الطَّالِبُ وَالْمَطْلُوبُ. What it means is, weak is the one who seeks and that which they seek. Weak is the one who seeks and that which they seek. What does that mean? In so many words, what it means is, our problem is, the reason why we are weak, the reason why we are not empowered, the reason why we don't have power, emotional, psychological, physical, every kind of, spiritual power, the reason why we are weak is because we seek other things which are weak. What we seek is not strong, and so we are not strong. We put our hope in things which are temporary. And so when they go away, we become broken. We put our dependence on things which go away, which are weak, which cannot hold us, which end up dying or leaving, or we lose it. And so then we become weak. It's like a person who's climbing, right? They're rock climbing, and they have a harness, they have a rope that they're holding on to. But what if they don't have any rope and instead they're holding on to a twig? What's going to happen to them? If they're climbing a cliff and they're holding a twig, it doesn't take, a student of physics to tell you that they're going to end up falling, because that twig is going to break, because the twig cannot carry the weight of a human being. Is it the twig's fault? Is it the creation's fault that they let you down? It's not the creation's fault. It is the fact that you are seeking something from the creation that it was not made to give you. When we seek, and let's just clarify this. When we seek ultimate security from anything of the creation, we will be insecure. When we seek protection from anything other than the Creator, we will be unprotected. When we seek ultimate emotional fulfillment, what do I mean? I mean that you go to somebody emotionally empty and you tell them, fill me, make me happy, make me okay. Of course they're not going to be able to do it, because they're not created to be able to do that. I found it very interesting when I was listening to the other lectures, and I was reflecting about the words that Allah uses when He talks about family and He talks about your spouse. Because there is this concept of comfort that Allah says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, in order for you to find tranquility. And Sheikh Abdul Nasser was saying peace and tranquility in your spouse. This is real, and it can be real. And you say in another, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. That you ask Allah to give you the gift of making your spouses and your children the coolness of the eyes. But I was reflecting on the fact that these words are very obviously, they're chosen very carefully, very wisely. Allah says peace and tranquility and coolness of the eyes. Now, while all those 3 things are awesome, but are they necessary for our survival? You see, here is the problem. There is a difference between a need and a want. There is a difference between comfort and coolness of the eyes and air in the lungs and food and breathing. Now, here is the problem. When we go to the creation, whether it is our spouse or our money or our job or our careers, for a need, for them to fill us and keep us alive and fill that emptiness, that's something that they cannot provide. That can only be found in the Creator. That our survival and our salvation is only in the Creator. But there is pleasure and there is coolness of the eyes and there is comfort and peace that can be found in the creation. And so this is the balance. We don't say that there is none of that in our religion. That relationship, that comfort can only happen in salah. But what can only happen through your relationship with Allah is that empty place inside you, that empty place inside you can only be filled with your relationship with Allah. And when that empty place is filled with your relationship with Allah, then and only then can you really enjoy your relationships with the creation. The qurrata a'yun. You see, if a person is starving, they don't really care much if their eyes are cooled, right? If you're starving, you haven't eaten for days, you're not going to care about the coolness in your eyes. You just need food. And so, in fact, when we go to the creation and we go with our starvation, right? You go to your friends and you're starving and you need them to fill you and feed you, right? You go to your spouse and you need them to emotionally give you that fill inside. Or your career, or your job, or your prestige, or your status. We go to these things, but they are all weak. And they cannot fill us. And when we go to these things, which are by definition weak, and by definition temporary, and by definition limited, we also become weak. And that's the profound lesson of these three words. If you really want to reach empowerment, you have to make sure that your ultimate source is something that is infinitely powerful. Something that doesn't go to sleep, something that doesn't let you down, something that doesn't die, something that you cannot lose. It cannot be your money or your spouse or your children or these things which are temporary. And so we mix things around. We have to be a people of balance and a people of focus. On the one hand, we don't say that relationships are not important, or even that relationships cannot actually give us happiness and give us comfort. But on the other hand, our problem is that we seek something in the relationship with the creation that can only be found in the relationship with the Creator. When we come back to the proper source, only then can we find empowerment. It goes back to this powerful statement, I have come to free you from the slavery to the slave and bring you to the slavery of the Lord of the slave.
أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي